This is Austin from Rock City Studios, and this is this week's Tip Tuesday. So for this week's Tip Tuesday, as you can see here, we've got some strings, obviously. So that can only mean we're talking about how to capture Santa Claus and hold him ransom for some presents. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is get some strings, and then you're gonna wanna head to your local mall, and once you see that guy, you're just gonna...
Austin, we're supposed to do the string gauge Tip Tuesday today.
Oh. That makes a lot more sense, actually. Right, take two. String gauges. But for the record, if you're gonna go get Santa, I'd use 12s. So I've got 3 different packs with 3 different string gauges. I'm gonna tell you why we have them and what they're used for. I have gauges 10 to 46, 11 to 52, and 12 to 54. And you're probably wondering, why would there be so many different types of gauges? Well, I'm gonna tell you. Do you remember many moons ago when I told you about down tuning? Well, that's kind of why we have different gauges. So, starting with 10 to 46. Now, when you see this, the 10 in there represents the high E string, the really high string, you know, the really thin one, that one. That's what the 10 is. And the 46 is the low E string, the fat one, like Santa. Remember him? We're gonna go get him. Now, this is more what you'd go with when you first start out playing, because it's not too thick. It's just thin enough to handle that high tuning, standard tuning, and yeah, it's pretty comfortable. Now, when you get thicker, we get to 11s. Now we have 11 to 52. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use 11s in standard tuning. That's totally okay. But the problem is, like, when I was a kid, I used 11s to start off. It was hurting my hands because when I would have to bend, it would be really hard to bend with that high strung. 11s are more or less used for down tuning. So from standard E, if you go down to D standard, that's when 11s would come into play, handling D standard, drop C, and possibly C standard. That's up to you. Going lower than that on a 6-string guitar, then we get to 12s, 12 to 54. The thick boys. These are the meatiest boys. They handle like down to drop B, drop A, the ridiculous low tunings that you can achieve on the 6-string guitar. That's where 12s come into play. And this is also what you use to get Santa. So that's when these really thick guys come into play. And then we start getting into 7 strings and stuff like that, and that's just, you know, above and beyond with gauges. So like I said, when you're in standard tuning, I'm not saying you can't use 11s or 12s, but there is something that can kind of hurt. So not only just it'll be harder on your hands to bend and pick and stuff like that, but also let's say you have your guitar neck, right? If you're in standard tuning and you put 12 to 54s on, then the problem is your neck is going to be holding that really thick tension. It's so highly strung that the neck might experience some problems at some point. So that's why I don't recommend using that thick of gauge in standard tuning. I'd really save this for going low and low and low. The lower the gauge, like 10 to 46, go ahead and try with these strings tuning it down to like C standard. Go ahead, I dare you. Yeah, spaghetti strings. It's so floppy you can't even get a single note out. That's why it helps keeping these guys at standard, and that's why it helps keeping these guys in low tunings. Put everything into basic terms. Lower tune your guitar, the looser your strings get, so you want the thicker boys, so that way it's not as loose when you tune it. And then higher the string gauge, the tighter your strings get, so you want thinner guys, so it can handle that. It's all personal preference. Feel free to, you know, experiment with different gauges, and of course it's all about feeling as well. If you're comfortable, then that's all that matters. And if it sounds good, that's all that matters. Don't let some guy on the internet tell you what to do. Experiment. Feel free to mix and match. If you want to have really thin high strings, like with the E, B, and G string, but you want really thick low strings, feel free to like take the bottom 3 out of this one, the top 3 out of this one. Totally cool. So if you came here wanting to capture Santa Claus, I'm sorry, I tried. He's not telling me anything, but let me know if you still want to do that. Hit me up, it's all good. But if you found the string gauge talk helpful, then that's a win in my book. That was this week's Tip Tuesday. Stay tuned for next week's.